Thank you very much indeed, Katrina. Good morning to you all. What a fantastic place this is. Marvelous to hear so many different operators of all sorts of transport. What am I doing here? Well, I work for the BBC, presenter, correspondent over many, many years, as you probably tell from this lot. And it also says on the program here, I'm a rail enthusiast. Oh, I can always feel people saying, oh my God, he's one of those. I am that. I am that. But my most important job, I always think, today, which is the day when I'm with you, and I'll be introducing sessions this morning particularly, and then later on, I'm here on behalf of your customers, your passengers. I'm the one who says, oh, hang on a minute, that's all very well, but what about, why did my train arrive late? What's going on? That's what I want to do here today. We're going to hear about all sorts of technology and IT and digital goodness knows what. What I'm interested in is how you actually get people like me coming and going, how you service and how you're going to serve people in the future. I arrived here in Amsterdam by Eurostar, direct, at long last. Thank you very much. I'm very glad to hear a little bit of applause for Eurostar. Actually, they do deserve applause. A couple of things. First of all, we arrived dead on time to the second. Which was terrific after the journey through Brussels and everywhere else. But the most important thing was I sat at my seat and I was getting a bit lonely because the train does gradually lose passengers as you go along. And a man came up to me, very nice steward, and said, can I get you anything? And I said, I'd love a cup of tea. Well, I'm a Brit, I drink tea. Do you know it arrived in a proper little teapot and a milk? And it made the last few miles up to Amsterdam here just go that little bit better. These are the sort of things that matter to a lot of people, you'd be surprised. I get a bit tired, actually, to be honest, of being told all the wonderful new things that are going on. I want to be able to go and buy a ticket, for example, from a person. I do. I don't do Twitter. I'm not interested in all of that sort of thing because of my age. Bear us in mind as well, very important. Bear people like me in mind. We're going to be good customers for a long time yet. We're not quite ready to do some of the very, very clever things that you're also very, very keen on. Remember everybody, in other words. Just a quick word about UK experience. UK experience. We more or less invented railways. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And we continue to bring in all sorts of innovations and things, but we love to hear what's happening abroad. We've had a really difficult time this last few months, particularly in the part of the world where I live. I live in the London area. We've had all sorts of problems with new timetables. We're bringing in new technology all the time, of course. It's been quite tough. For the first time in my life, I stood on a mainline London railway station, a big railway station, not the metro, not the underground lines, and a train came in and I couldn't get on it because it was so crowded and it was so late and the next one wasn't for nearly another hour. That's never happened to me before. So what I'm trying to say to you is, great, bringing this technology in is all very well, all very fine. Be careful about predicting the future. At my age, I can tell you it doesn't always turn out as you expect. We've had some interesting figures for passenger numbers in the UK recently. They're doing a bit of that. People are not working on Fridays like they used to, so there aren't so many commuters. All sorts of things change. Anyway, you're here. The future is yours. And I wish you every luck with it. Now, the idea of these first sessions is I get people up on stage one by one, really top people from this industry, and I'm absolutely delighted that they're here. We'll gather them together eventually, and we'll have a chat with them as well for our first session, bring everybody together. Mobile phones. I know we can't avoid the damn things, but please make sure they're on silent. If you're studying your phone, we can't avoid doing that. We have to get used to that these days, but please make sure they don't ring and disturb the rest of us. Okay, right, that's enough from ranting on from me. Let's get on with our first speaker, first person I'm going to talk to. And I would encourage all of you to ask your questions. Make sure you come up with questions as well. Honestly, I always find I'm going to ask questions until, forever. I really will. I'm always so fascinated in the subjects. I will ask the question, but I also want to hear from you as much as possible. Stick your hand up, stick your hand up. I don't know whether we've got microphones for you, but shout loud. It's a wonderful building. You can be heard extremely clearly, and let's hear from you at almost any point. Okay. What have we got to say? Yeah, okay, let's get started. I love the title for this one because it's looking forward to the mobility of the future and the role of railways in our society in 2040. I'll be 93 if I'm here. My goodness, what a thought. We're delighted to invite to the stage, first of all, the CEO of NS, State Railway here, the Netherlands Transport, Roger van Boxtel. Would you give him a big round of applause as he comes up to the stage?
Good morning, Nicholas.
Good morning to you.
Good
Do
morning.
sit down,
Thank
Roger.
you.
I think you've got a microphone like mine, so
Yep.
that's good. That's good. Off we go.
Let's hope it works.
Yes, hope it works. I think it does. Yeah, the indication is from everybody. They'll all hear you very clearly.
Can I say hi to everybody and welcome them in the Netherlands? And especially in Amsterdam, in this fantastic building. Does everybody know what this building is about?
Tell us quickly about the building.
This is the stock market. It used to be the stock market. And you know, the Netherlands were the first stock market in the world. And this building was made by a very, very famous Dutch architect, Berlage. And now it's not in function anymore. Now it's a Congress Hall. But it's a really fantastic historic place right in the center of Amsterdam.
Jolly. Thank
So
you.
welcome. And close to the central station. So if you need to get out, the trains are over there.
Splendid. Right. Okay. Let's get to it. First of all, tell us what's the big objective at the moment with your railway system. Just paint a very quick picture of what the system is, what it does, and what you're trying to do.
Okay. Well, we have a very old, complicated system, railway system. But it's functioning very well. We had a small crisis about 3 years ago about high-speed train and a concession that we didn't do properly. But at the moment, NS is really back on track. Our KPIs are all in green and not in red. So the Ministry of KPIs of performance. The customer satisfaction is up to 88. It's never been as high as that before. We're about 93% on time, and that is in a complicated network really an achievement. So I'm very proud of all my colleagues, over 20,000. And we also run trains in the UK. Despite Brexit at hand, we still love it over there. And you came with Eurostar, and I always say the Eurostar is the best proof that Brexit is exit. And that we can run towards London in a very quick time. And I hope also on the way back, now you still have to go out in Brussels, but within a year that will be finished, and then we have a direct communication, also a direct line to London as well from Amsterdam.
I look forward to that.
Yes, me too.
Very much indeed.
But our biggest challenge is, and maybe that's slightly philosophical, you know, far away has come a lot closer in the last decades. If you look at young people when they finish school, they go and travel the world, and far away is really close. But at the same time, close by is very far away. So in traffic terms, in logistics, when cities keep growing, and that's what they're doing in the Western world, the door-to-door travel is really getting very difficult. And you see the struggle also here in Amsterdam, too many cars. Public transport is increasing, but increasing even with 40% in the coming years. And we try to cope with that. NS is buying new trains for over 3 billion euro, so that's quite a lot of money. But we also need place to stock them, we need energy. We use, fortunately, 100% wind energy, which is a tremendous achievement. So no carbon dioxide distinction anymore. And I'm very proud of that.
I think you have a video. We can see a video, I think, about this business of sustainable energy.
Ja.
Yes, let's have a look at it.
De NS verbruikt veel energie. En dat is slecht voor het milieu. En dus bedachten we dat moet anders. Vanaf 1 januari 2017 reizen we in Nederland met de trein op 100% windstroom. Een beetje Nederlander, die kan toch wel met wind omgaan. Wist u dat 1 uur ronddraaien van een windmolen u van Utrecht naar Groningen brengt? Reizen op de wind. Ik ben er ondersteboven van.
Oh, come on, a round of applause for that. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hang on a minute. I mean, you really went right the way around?
Yeah.
Did you? I mean, what did you feel like when you were upside down?
It was freezing cold. It was freezing cold. It took me 3 hours to warm up again. But it was great fun.
But are you not afraid of heights then?
No. But we had a lot of debate in the Netherlands, you might know, because the millers weren't very happy with this. Because they say we protect these monuments, and if everybody goes along hanging around in the windmills, then it will be a mess. So I paid him a good contribution and said it's only for one time, and it's for good purpose, because hanging on a true new windmill is impossible.
Yes.
So we used the old one. And it had a lot of impact, especially abroad. In the Netherlands, people take it for granted. In the outside world, people are very enthusiastic, and I got many questions from Indonesia and Malaysia and Canada. How did you do this? And they really want to know how we made a deal with the energy company. And I'm very proud of NS that we achieved this, and that we can really say that all these trains every day, millions of people, 1.3 million each day, travel totally on wind energy.
And all right, so it's obviously it's a complicated subject generally, but just what was the starting point? What did you do? What to do with it, and how did you really achieve it?
Well, we helped an energy company to invest in a windmill park in the North Sea. And so we financed a little of their needs, financial needs, and then in return we said we want the energy back. So we were guaranteed that we get the 100% wind energy back, so we can run the trains totally on wind energy. And that's a very clever deal that we made. So we help them finance, they help us ride the trains in a proper, sustainable way.
Okay, so what about the impact on costs?
Well, to us, it's a tremendous gain. It's a lot cheaper than driving on diesel or whatever, on coals, and it's also a contribution to the quality of society. And I think that's very important, because with cities growing, with more and more people living together and using a lot of materials that we don't like, plastics, we're going to ban out plastic as well in the Dutch stations. That will take some years, but we really started this policy. We are now refurbishing our existing trains, and 95% of the materials being reused. So that's really an agenda you can set as a company and live up to the standard. So I think that's a good job that we're doing.
So an awful lot of change. This depends, I presume, on more or less fully electrified system, does it?
Yes, and there is an issue, because we still have a European challenge with the electric system and the harmonizing of the policy. Every country is following its own agenda. So, and I always say that the time scheduling of trains is primarily a local issue, a national issue. So, and that's really strange, because if I compare Europe in a broader sense, including the UK, we are losing ground, for especially if you compare us to China. In China, they spent 300 billion euro in just a couple of years to connect all their cities with high-speed trains. So it's not only about goods, it's also about knowledge and people that they are speeding up also with the rail infrastructure. They're moving towards Europe with the One Belt Road policy. They are already financing infrastructure projects in Italy, in Portugal, and in Greece. And at the same time, we don't take Europe seriously anymore. And there are many parties who are eroding on the idea that Europe is important. We have Trump on one side, Putin on the other side, who are also trying to diminish the power of Europe. We have the Brits, unfortunately, who decided to step out. And I think in the long term, if you look at it from a geopolitical point of view, we are losing ground. And I think from rail infrastructure, we have a tremendous responsibility in connecting people and connecting countries. So we have to speed up. I'm very happy that from Amsterdam you can go 11 times a day to Brussels and Paris with the Thalys. Now 2 times a day to London, and next year 3 times, because it's tremendous success, the Eurostar. But if you look, for example, eastwards from Amsterdam to Berlin, that's an historic travel. If you like romanticism and you like to go back in time to your 10s or 16, 28, what is it, 16, 18 years old, and you travel by train through Europe, well, take the train to Berlin. You go 50 years back in time. It's tremendous. You go to the Dutch border, then you have to get out of the train in a place you've never heard of before, Bad Bentheim, then locks change, and then 6.5 hours later you're in Berlin. For the 2 richest nations in Europe, it's really ridiculous. So we said we have to speed this up, we have to harmonize the electrification in a higher speed. It takes too much time, it's too much inward looking in each country. And I'm very happy that the Germans and the Dutch said now we're going to speed up the connection, to improve that connection between Berlin and Amsterdam. And I really hope that this whole idea of connecting capital to capital in Europe will get great support from the European Union, also investment money, because it's necessary, and otherwise we're losing ground. And we also need it because of the environmental issue. Now, today, as we speak today, 62 flights a day go from Schiphol Airport to London and back. That's really ridiculous. We can do that by train and be a lot more efficient. We are much more responsible if we look at the climate change and the CO2 extermination. So I really think we have to incorporate this in the policy and to show that rail, both far away but also close by. We just opened the North Sea line here in Amsterdam. Go and see how it works, the metro. I think we're doing a great job, but we have to speed up.
Right, we talked, I mentioned in my introduction the difficulty of forecasting. Dreadfully difficult, isn't it? You can't really be sure what's going to happen to passenger flows and everything else. What are the sort of key things that you're going to try and do by 2040? I take your point about the problems of harmonization in Europe and so on, but just in terms of your, as a rail operator in this country.
Well, in this country, we said it's not only about rail. It's about running trains, it's about creating great stations that are a true public experience in the sense that it's not a dirty place anymore as 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So we did a good job. If you look here in Amsterdam, but also Rotterdam and The Hague and Utrecht, great new stations, well fit in the environmental questions that the city councils have. On the other hand, we introduced the bikes in the Netherlands, a great success. 3 million kilometers of biking this year. Over 20,000 and now going up to 30,000 bikes in all stations in the Netherlands. But at the same time, we have to keep on moving with the client, with our traveler, because most of the bikes now are changing into electrical bikes. The stations that we built are not equipped for stalling electrical bikes. So we have to work on that. We also have to work together with taxi companies, with bus companies, because passengers are not interested in my issues in connecting with others. They want a smooth travel. And if we don't change that direction, then we're losing ground. And I think if we change in time and rearrange your company in following what the traveler wants, then I think you have a good forecast also as a company.
And what about the structure of NS? How, is that going to change? Are you getting more privatization? How are things going to work?
Well, what I really hope is we now have the head concession in the Netherlands for the main infrastructure. I hope we can keep that because the Netherlands is too small to open it up to a total competition. And I mean, then we're splintering all the connections and good arrangements. I'm not afraid of competition. I mean, we have a few competitors and that keeps us sharp. But if you crumble it, then nothing is left. And that's the big tension here in the Netherlands. So in 2020, we are getting a report on how we perform. And then the Dutch cabinet has to say if we can keep the main contract also after 2025, because that's what's at stake. That's nationally. At the same time, I'm not totally worried about that because we are performing really well at the moment. And the only thing we have to do is keep up not the appearance, but really the performance. At the same time, I'm really looking at how we can diversify as a company in also working together with other suppliers of transport. And that can be anything, that it's the biking, but not only the biking near the station, but also into the city. That can be the taxi, and whether it's the Amsterdam taxi company or a Uber or whatever, but we try to give the best to the client. We are making a great app. If you look at the NS app, I'm really proud of that, and there's a high customer satisfaction with that app because you know, the data are in there, you can see whether we're on time or not, or if you have a choice in varying your travel. And I think that's the new world, and we have to live up to that.
Very grateful to you. If you would hang on there, Roger, other people will be coming up to join us. But will you give a round of applause, please, to...
Thank you.
Don Quixote, that's what everybody knows what I'm talking about, I think. Do you know the story of Don Quixote?
Don Quixote?
Don Quixote, yeah.
Of course I know him.
Well, that's you now, going around on the old windmill.
Yeah, but there's one difference.
Go on.
I beat it. Don Quixote didn't beat the mill.
That's true, that's very true. Okay, right, will you now welcome, please, Jean-Yves Desjardins Siciliano, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Via Rail Canada. He comes to the stage. Thank you very much indeed.
Nice to meet you.
Yes. Very good morning to you. Good morning. If you could bear to use the microphone there, that would be helpful. That's it. Oh, you've got one. Oh, you've got one on as well. Oh, I see. Are we doing well? Excellent. Right. Well, there's an awful lot to pick up on there. First of all, just tell us, explain the structure of your company, and what you do, and what it runs.
Well, so Via Rail Canada is the Government of Canada agency that runs the passenger rail service from coast to coast in Canada. We've been in existence now for 40 years. Up until 1977, the passenger services in Canada were provided by freight companies that attached cars on their freight trains. So the challenge in North America is obviously that we're a car economy, and it's not unusual for most households to have several cars. And so for us, competition is getting people out of their cars and onto our trains.
Right. Okay. Let's go back to where you started this. Rail travel, of course, was the thing right up to what, 50s, 60s, and whatever, and then the great, as you said, the competition began very seriously. How did you start tackling that?
Well, so up until 1992, in 1992, Government of Canada, having financial challenges like most governments in the world, decided to cut back on rail service significantly, and so the year over year, from 92 until 2014, ridership kept on dropping, and revenues obviously accordingly, and deficits growing. And so in 2014, we brought together a team to essentially turn this thing around on two fronts. One is to show that by addressing the market differently, so from moving from being a a transportation train company to a customer-centric company. So going from transportation to a marketing organization, you could actually turn that around and grow ridership and grow revenue. And so in the space of the last 4 years, we've demonstrated that. We've grown ridership and revenue by over close to 40% over the last 4 years. The second piece of that strategy was to develop a long-term plan for this company that would take it out of being a deficit-making organization, and that required two things. One was a new fleet to service what we call the Quebec to Windsor corridor, which is the most populated area of Canada, over about 1,100 kilometers. And that required two things. One is a new fleet, and the Government of Canada allowed us to go out and procure a new fleet, and we are in the middle of that procurement. So by the end of this year, we'll be announcing a new fleet that will be coming on by 2022 to replace all the equipment that is currently in use in that corridor, some of which dates back to 1954. And yes, that is older than that's older than the CEO.
Year, 54.
That's older than the CEO of this company, but clearly not of Netherlands.
It's my birth year.
So we'll replace that fleet. And then the second piece of that is an infrastructure project, $6 billion, to have a dedicated track so we can run on passenger tracks built for speed and comfort, because today we still run on freight train tracks. So that project, we're hoping to get approval by April of next year and start building that out, and that trackage will be completed by 2023. So by 2023-24, in Canada, in the busiest corridor, you'll have a 21st century fleet running on dedicated passenger service tracks, and that's at speeds of just over 200 kilometers an hour. They're not high speed because the average car trip in Canada is 200 kilometers. The average intercity car trip is 220 kilometers, and therefore our trains need to stop every 100 or so kilometers in order to address the market. So that's why high speed is not the going-in strategy. Over time, another generation of leaders will increase speeds, but for the time being, the strategy is to go at conventional speeds.
Right.
In the Netherlands, 200 kilometers is truly high speed. Because at the moment, the trains don't run faster than 140 or 160. So we're going towards 200, and that's a tremendous improvement.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think you said a 40% increase in carryings. Is that right? Is that revenue numbers of passengers?
That's passengers and revenue.
Passengers and revenue. How did you do it?
Well, by what I was saying earlier, by changing the mindset of employees, by determining that and agreeing that we're not in the transportation business, we're in the hospitality business. And how we do that is by running trains. But our mindset is to make people feel welcome and well treated when they're in our care. And so, we have a situation, as I said, where our equipment is 50 years old, where we run on freight lines that we don't control. So we engaged employees by saying, let's focus on what we control. And what we control is our attitude. I tell employees, if you can't put up a smile on your face in the morning, stay home. We don't need you today, okay? You're in the hospitality business. You're welcoming the public in our home. So care about the environment you're providing to them. There's a piece of paper on the ground, pick it up. If you're serving coffee, make sure it's warm. If somebody needs a cell phone to call somebody because to get picked up, loan them your phone, okay? Show empathy, show sympathy. Be welcoming and treat people well, and more people will come more often for more money. And that's the definition of marketing, isn't it? Getting more people to buy your product more often. And so 4 years into this, I can truly say that employees have bought into that strategy of controlling what they control, which is their attitude. And therefore now, the response of the public has been very good. Now, obviously, you do have externalities, right? So in Canada, like I'm sure here, but road congestion is monstrous. In and out of cities can take over an hour in peak periods. And therefore, people are looking to an alternative. But as you mentioned earlier, you know, we don't pick anybody up at their front door, and we don't drop them at their destination door. So we have to work with partners, and we have intermodality partners where we have agreements where we line up our scheduling, we issue tickets that include the pricing of the next mode of transport. So it is a seamless experience for the customer, as close as we can from his front door all the way to his destination.
So
Because
that includes taxi, buses.
Taxi, buses, car rentals, car sharing, and so we have to do that because any challenge in transferring, you know, we'll have the customer do the easy thing, and in Canada, because as I said, it's a car culture, the easy thing is to get into your car. So changing seats from a train seat to a bus seat or a cab seat, or changing seats is the biggest challenge to adoption in our business. So we got to make that as seamless as possible. Where we're having huge issues in Canada, which I'm not familiar with here in Europe, but is interoperability. You know, we do have rights of ways. You know, historically in the mid 1900s, as our host claimed, when the British invented the train, it was deployed here in Europe to link towns and people. In North America, it was used to settle the continent. Other than First Nation communities, there was nobody living in North America, so there was no town to connect. So the railway was built, was engineered, and designed to carry wood and iron ore and the products that would build out the continent. And that's why the railway lines are extremely inefficient and uncomfortable for passenger service. Okay? They have steep turns, and they're built on the notion of low speed, high weight, okay? Which doesn't apply to us, obviously. So that's why we have to have our own trackage. And the same way that here in North America, in Europe, today, our colleagues try to increase freight traffic on their trackage. In North America, we're trying to get our own trackage to do passenger rail because we've never had dedicated trackage for passengers. So there's a major mind shift happening in North America because, as I said, road congestion is one thing, and an aging population, 25% of Canadians will be over 65 by 2030, and a younger generation who, for the first time in the last 4 years, do not rush out and get a driver's permit when they turn the age of driving, because they define freedom in terms of connectivity, being online. Whereas in my generation, we define freedom as using your dad's car to go to your buddy's place, and God knows what happened there.
Well,
but
that's an interesting thing. I think it's a comparison with you in the big cities. If you look at the Netherlands, the whole area between Rotterdam and Amsterdam is one conglomerate of cities. And that will increase. Mm-hmm. It will go on. And what I see is a great mental change with young people. When we started our first jobs, we were longing for our first car. Yeah. They don't want a car here. It's impossible to pay the parking ticket. It's polluting. Yeah. And it will still take a decade or so, or maybe even 2 decades, before all cars are electrical. And in the small. So there's a tremendous future for rail, mm-hmm. if we be quickly and connective. Yeah. If we are intermodal and not, but the cars, they will be bent out of the inner cities, like in London. Yeah. Johnson started with it, the mayor, and you see it every day now. If I look at the Tower area, it's all about bikes and public transport, and not private cars anymore. Not so.
True. Average road speeds in London now are as bad as they were before the First World War, which we've been talking about. So it just shows you on the streets.
I wasn't there at that time. I can't.
Even I wasn't there. Even I wasn't there then. Just go back. Okay, that's all great. Lots of great ideas and ambitions and so on. Paying for all this. Where's the investment coming from? How much support are you getting from government? What is the effect on the finances of your business?
Right. So the fleet that we're procuring now is funded by the Government of Canada, so it comes from tax revenue. The new infrastructure will be going out for private financing. And so the government will provide we will provide the assets that we have today, plus some support for some elements, but we are going to be most likely asked to raise private funding. And because...
Who are those? Venture capitalists or pension funds? Or
In North America today, I mean, there are a lot of pension funds. I mean, like the HSR line had Canadian investors involved in it. And so there are many pension funds looking for long-tail infrastructure investments. And when you look around the world today, Canada has got the enviable position of being a very steady geopolitical state with excellent economic performance. You know, it's the only country that survived, that went through the 2008 crash with very little damage to its economy. So we're very well positioned that way. So raising the money is not really a big concern. You got to keep in mind that today, between those major cities, we run 5 or 6 frequencies a day, right? And frequency is the key advantage of your car. It's always available. So this new infrastructure will allow us to go up to 15 frequencies a day. And in North America, 15 is the number. If you're an airline, or you're a bus line, or to be soon a train line, 15 frequencies is what allows you to service the market in a way that people have the full flexibility as close as you can to an alternate transport, which is their car. So we'll be able to do this, and by doing so, we'll triple the ridership, double the cost, and therefore produce a margin that allows for an investment return.
Indeed. Okay. So the future looks very bright, but this is without the sort of electrification that we see all over Europe. Not in the UK, sadly, but not all over Europe.
At $6 billion, that includes electrification. Right. And in Canada, electricity is produced by water, right? It's hydroelectric. Yeah. So it's extremely clean energy. And so at $6 billion, it is and I'm not planning to tie myself to an electrical dam to make that point. But
well, it's an interesting idea.
I could see you in a little boat coming down across the top of it. I think that's the thing.
I can feel a Monty Python episode coming.
Well, indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Will you please give a round of applause too? And what we're doing here is sort of dashing into very interesting territory indeed. We're very grateful to these two gentlemen. Some other people are going to come along as well. And now picking up on what we talked about in different modes of transport working together and things changing, I want to welcome now the head of FlixTrain, Matthias Müller. This is an interesting business, better known in Europe perhaps as FlixBus, but we're now going to hear about FlixTrain. Will you please give Matthias Müller a warm welcome to the stage. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Right, you're great. My guest's gradually getting further and further away from me, but I can see that's the main thing. Okay, now just explain to us, first of all, for those who don't know what FlixBus is and was, what's the background?
Basically, we started with FlixBus just 5 years ago, so we are quite a young company. We started in Germany. It was a quite interesting point in time because the market got liberalized, and we started directly at the beginning in 2013 with the first services. And then we quickly expanded our services, so we expanded our network to France, to Italy, Eastern Europe and Scandinavia. So nowadays we cover more than 28 countries in Europe. And I mean, where I'm most glad about is that we started our train business this year and we entered the US, so actually 29 countries now.
Right. Just go back to explain to us the bus business. The opportunity arose, the market was liberalized. We're talking about long-distance markets, long-distance services rather than urban areas. So you were pushing out established operators.
It's right that we only focus on long-distance coach services. And at the point where we entered the market, there were no established players. I mean, of course, every big railway company or the state-owned railway companies, they had a small fleet which was serving some areas with long-distance coach services, but there was no real market. So we had really to start to build up the market from scratch. And what we saw there is actually quite interesting, because it wasn't like that we pushed away others or that we took away some market share. We were able to increase the market itself. And that's something which is quite interesting to me, especially when it now comes to the railway business, how we can increase the market together and not starting to compete in within the public transportation. But I mean, what we want to do, and I can agree there to you, we want to reduce the private car travel share, and I think there are a lot of opportunities how we can do so.
And the basis of the business, of the bus or coach business, or whatever we call long-distance road transport, low-cost fares, presumably, low fares. Was that the sort of real hook to get people?
Yeah, I mean, we concentrated directly at the beginning at mainly three aspects: affordability, flexibility, and eco-friendliness. And we said if we combine all that together and we provide it in the customer in a convenient way, then we will have a chance. And when I'm talking about a convenient way, I mean, like, we directly at the beginning, for example, said, okay, we won't just have a fancy website and buy another app and we try to connect it somehow. We, at the beginning, already said we want to develop all on our own. So we are a bit more like tech-driven, so we have a lot of technological knowledge. And we then said, okay, we don't want to operate the buses on our own, so we looked there for strong partners who can operate the buses and the trains. So in fact, we own one bus, but that's all. So we don't run the buses or the trains on our own, but we said, okay, we look for partners who have a strong track record and who have already experience in running buses and trains, because that allowed us also at the same time to grow the business that quickly, because we always knew, okay, there's a partner who knows, especially in most time the local area, how to provide good and stable quality, and we can like bring it to the customer.
Right, okay, so bus model one basically understands, I suppose, but you now trains now. What's the plan? What is the future?
I think the future there is like to connect both modes of transportation. So for us, I mean, it's of course also an advantage that we already have an existing network in Germany and that we now can start with first connections running by long distance trains. But what we see there as a chance is really like to synchronize the timetables and to provide the customer a convenient and quickest way from A to B. And because, I mean, I think you said it earlier, the customer doesn't care how he gets from A to B. He just wants to have an affordable and flexible way to commute. And I think especially my generation is now a generation who, like, we don't own a car anymore, we don't want to, we just want to have a convenient way to get somewhere. And I think that's what we can offer.
Right, but how are you doing? Where are you doing this, and how are you doing? What, are you taking over particular lines, adding services? How does it work?
We started in March this year, so we are quite young with the FlixTrain business, and we actually started on two major corridors in Germany. One is Stuttgart-Berlin, and the other one is Hamburg-Cologne. And we started on a quite small scale because we just wanted to see, okay, is this really working? How is the demand? And directly at the beginning, it was kind of amazing and much more than expected how the feedback by the customer itself. So that's why we then decided directly summer this year to double our offer. So still both those two corridors. And at the moment we are in a stage where we prepare the growth for next year. So we want to add one other strong corridor in Germany, that's Berlin-Cologne.
Right, okay.
And was that a concession you won, or is it was granted to you? How did it work?
No, we applied actually for the route. So we are only long distance.
with other suppliers?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we had to find a gap actually in the existing network. I mean, in Germany, it's like, of course, we have the fourth railway package, which is liberalizing the market, but still the current Deutsche Bahn owns several concessions for the next years. And we only have the opportunity to apply on a yearly basis. And then you have to see where you can find some white spots to still achieve a good travel time. But as I learned from you, we are high speed because we travel 200 kilometers per hour.
Yeah, I know.
And, okay, quite a few things in there. First of all, your rolling stock, your trains, where do you get, are they new trains you're using, or refurbished trains? Are you borrowing them from Deutsche Bahn? Hard to imagine Deutsche Bahn lending anything, but there we go.
I would like to borrow ICE,
Yeah.
but yeah. That's not happening. No, I mean, we need, of course, as a private operator, to somehow get a start and get a first start in the market. And that's why we now, at the moment, rely on second-hand material. So we refurbish them now. We are now in a process to refurbish those. Coach sets, so we are running with locomotives and coaches, electrified, of course. And that's how we see the only possibility to really get a first step in the market, because we don't have the security from a track perspective. So we have to apply every year again and again. So it's a bit, yeah, it takes more experience at least, or a longer track record to really then make the investment in new rolling stock. But clearly that's the future for us.
Okay,
as well.
right. So what about your staff? Where are they coming from? Are you taking on new people, or attracting people away from, we keep saying Deutsche Bahn, but they're the obviously big operator. How does that work? How do you get enough people to run this service?
Yeah. There already also our business model comes into the game. So we don't hire the staff directly, which is on board of our train. That's done by our partner who runs the trains. So we apply for the network. We get the concession, the track access. We do marketing. We do everything towards the customer, and then we have partners who give the rolling stock and who hire the people. And to answer your question, where those people are coming from, it's quite funny because almost half of the crew is basically somehow connected already to FlixBus, if you look at the train attendance itself. So we have there already quite a pool of people who are willing now to also serve with us on FlixTrain. But of course, like if you look at higher railway-specific skilled people, there is a lack in general in the market, and we have now to attract people on our own.
Right, okay. And what about your carryings? What sort of numbers, and what about passenger? We heard about passenger satisfaction. How are you measuring all that, and how are you doing?
Actually, we ask every customer after every ride how well or how good or satisfied he is with the trip. And we did that for the bus, and we now adjusted it to FlixTrain. And at the end, we measure it at an NPS scale. So we look how much promoters do we have, and actually the numbers for FlixTrain especially are looking really promising. So I never thought that we really can reach that high. And yeah, I mean, I think like the soon we get really also more refurbished coaches into the service, this will even increase further.
Right, okay. And do you, sorry, just one question. When you talk about Berlin-Cologne as the next one, and Berlin-Stuttgart, I mean, these are major routes. These are the principal railway lines, transport links in Germany, aren't they? So how do you fit your trains into the schedule? Do you get the kind of the very early morning and the late at nights and squeeze, or can you run in a sort of good time for a lot of people?
Actually, we have quite attractive times indeed. So especially on Hamburg-Cologne, we have like almost a perfect schedule, I would say. So we start around 8 in the morning, and then also way back is around 3, 4 in the afternoon. And of course, I mean, you have to be a bit more creative to find ways how to get through the existing operators. But also there, I mean, you can talk with different operators and can try to find with them a compromise to maybe start 2 minutes later at the station, and then you can get through and so on. So of course it's a lot of effort we had to put in to get those 2 tracks running, but I think it's a good first step, and as soon as the market is really fully liberalized and we are all on a kind of equal position to apply for tracks, at that point in time it will be really interesting.
That is still to come. Full liberalization is not
still
yet.
to come, yes.
Yes. Now, America, you're also looking at the United States, is that right?
Yes, we started.
What are you doing there?
Yeah. We started there in May, so it was quite exciting to have our first FlixBus in Hollywood. So we started on the West Coast.
Wait for the next movie.
Pardon?
We wait for the next movie.
Railways are glamorous things, that's fine. I think that's absolutely right. Go on, tell us what you were doing.
We started there on the West Coast. We are serving at the moment 40 destinations. And also there, I mean, it was quite parallel to the Flix train business, but we also were quite impressed by the demand, which is still there in the market. Even so, it's a bit more mature market than in Europe, because I mean, in Europe, the market got liberalized. We started and we grew the market more or less from the scratch. In the US, it's a bit different because you already have existing players. And for us, of course, as a German company, I mean, also going to the US is a bit bigger step. But we were really surprised to see that there is a huge demand. That's why we also now decided to start a new office, and we will soon be also on the East Coast, so in New York and Texas.
And where are your services on the West Coast now?
On the West Coast, I mean, there are around 40 destinations. The major route is Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and yeah.
And in the East, where will you operate in the East?
They're New York and Texas. I'm not fully aware of the final network yet.
Right. There's an awful, I mean, it sounds extremely ambitious what you're doing. Again, but I presume you're relying on the same sort of social trends that our 2 friends here have talked about. And you do find that, do you? That younger people not using cars, all sorts of changes coming.
Yeah, I think that's actually where we build on, and where we really, I mean, that's now the advantage that we are just 5 years old. When we started to design our product and what we want to offer the customer, we were directly able to consider that from the scratch. And I mean, we are a more young company also when it comes like the people who work there. So it's like kind of just doing what you want to have there. And where we see the future is clearly like combining the different modes of transportation. So really intermodal transportation, connecting now and synchronizing now the bus and the train business, but I think also like trying to get more possibilities to take your own bike with you, so you can now also for FlixBus and FlixTrain, you can carry your bike with you. And for a lot of people, that's a new experience, because in a long distance, you weren't able to take your own bike with you. And I think, yeah, at the end, we really have to find convenient ways to get from A to B, and we should not focus that much on is there now one operator or the second one, and not looking that much at the competition between the railway operators, because I think we can grow the market in general, because there is a huge demand. And maybe just one example to add there, if we ask our customers why or what would you have done if you wouldn't have bought a Flix ticket, most of the customers say we either would have used a private car or we wouldn't have done the trip at all. And I think that gives us a clear indication that we can grow the public transportation market in general. And we are not competing always about the same customers. So for example, we now with FlixTrain, we are in a customer group or segment which is between our existing best product, the state-owned operator, and we are there kind of in the middle because we say, okay, we have highly affordable tickets you can get across Germany starting 10 euros. At the same time, you maybe sometimes need 10 minutes or 20 minutes longer. It's not always the case. Hamburg-Cologne, we run same travel speed as an ICE, but of course, that's more our market gap. And we see that we can attract their new customers to the railway system or to the public transportation in general.
Well, it's very fascinating, I must say. Thank you very much indeed, Matthias. Would you give him a round of applause as well? I mean, it's always the story I always find at this event that there are so many interesting things going on, so many things we want to dig into, but there'll be lots of opportunities, obviously, throughout the day to talk to people on the stage here, and you'll hear them, and exhibitions and mixing together. So it's all very fascinating. And Matthias, thanks very much indeed for that. Okay, now then, we're now going to go on to hear from, I hope, is Mats is here? Good. Mats Johannesson, who is from MTR Express, the CEO of that, talking about the future of rail in Sweden. But you had to fly here, I gather, did you?
That's correct.
Well, never mind.
Took a morning flight from Stockholm, and everyone in this room knows about punctuality issues. So, hi, good morning. Hi.
Yes, you can't come by train, I don't think, yet.
Yes, you can. Actually, my chief commercial officer, Peter, went down by train. Took him somewhere around 18, 20 hours, but especially took him 14 printed tickets for the round trip. Says something about the development opportunity.
You and I could go into a corner and talk about ticketing until the world comes to an end, and it's one of, I mentioned at the beginning, I don't know whether you heard my talk at the beginning, help. On behalf of the customer, ticketing is just one of the many things that I would like to see something more sensible done. But, you know, we're arranging.
Change rapidly.
Good. Okay, let's just go back to where you are now. You're MTR Express. Explain to people exactly what they are, what you operate, and what you run.
MTR Express, we see ourselves as the first real challenger to the incumbent SJ on the open access network in Sweden. Still a young company, been into operation for about 3.5 years right now, running services at the moment between Stockholm and Gothenburg. A small company, 6 trains, 6 Stadler trains, 120 employees. Are trying to compete by punctuality, the most satisfied customers, and also by decreasing prices, and have a vision to simplify travel.
Right, okay. We heard a lot, Matthias talked about this as well, didn't you? But, okay, what's your definition of simplifying travel? Who are you trying to attract? How does it work?
No, but I mean, we do a lot of things. We want it to be as smooth as possible for people to get from A to B by using us as the mean of transportation. Since the start, we have ticketless travel. We are using ticket types or travel types that are flexible for the customers. We are making sure that our timetable is aligned to different types of customer groups and things like that. So.
Okay, well, just explain. So give us again the route that you operate and how many trains, where did you get those trains from? How do they fit? We talked about this from the time. How do you fit into the existing timetable?
We got the 6 Stadler trains, and as Matthias talked about, we also apply for path access on a yearly basis, which is a challenge. I mean, for existing operators, that might be okay. But if you, of course, look to invest into a new system and you are to buy trains for a number of million or billions, it is a huge risk and huge uncertainty to actually not know which timetable you will be able to operate. So we've had a process over the last 3 or 4 years where we've been pushing the Transport Authority, making sure that we are moving towards fair competition, making sure that the incumbent basically cannot own their timetable, which they have had historically. So that has been a challenge, but right now we are running about 110 services per week, and we are twisting and starting to see some positive changes on that as well.
Right, okay. And just explain your company itself. What is the structure of it? It's the Hong Kong, I presume it's the same one that we know in the UK
it
as
is.
well.
MTR Express is part of the MTR Nordic group, which besides the open access operation also operates the metro in Stockholm, tendered business, as well as the commuter trains in Stockholm. Then we are, of course, owned by MTR in Hong Kong, which is a huge benefit for us. It's a lot of know-how from running punctual operations in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that the experience of running sort of competitive services generally in Sweden has not gone that smoothly, or am I mixing up my countries?
No, that seems about right.
That's true,
and I mean, I would guess that we could be seen as the little brother making a lot of noise, of course, because we want to come into the market and create a value for the customers. And actually, as we talked about, increase the sustainable travel. But there is a lot of challenges. Path access is one. The biggest one, of course, is ticket distribution, where we are not allowed on the incumbent's website, which we now filed a complaint about, filed it in April, and the competition authorities are still working with. So we are hoping that will actually open up the possibilities.
Right, so put in simple terms, you mean that if somebody goes for whichever way they do it on the phone or or another way to find out train services, you're not necessarily there straight away. They've got to go to your website to find them.
Yeah, that's correct. And I mean, one objection to that you easily get is saying that, I mean, you cannot buy KLM airline tickets on the SAS website or things like that. But what you need to realize is that airlines the digitalization came before the market was opened up in Sweden on railways. So SJ.se was released in 1998. We had well over 10 years of monopoly. We started moving in all the regional tendered operators. So you can buy a regional commuter train between Stockholm and Uppsala, for example, on the SJ.se website. You also allowed access to the first competitors on the open access network, 2 of them. It was actually first in 2015 when we started operations that we were denied. Then you have a situation where the general opinion or asking the public is, where do you buy a train ticket? It is on sj.se or through the app or something like that. So that is a big challenge for us and something that we need to overcome.
Okay, and now what sort of service do you offer? What makes it different from what is provided by the state?
I mean, we since the start, we've been the most punctual operator. Of course, we are running on the same tracks, but we have shown that we can be more punctual on a regular basis than the incumbent. As we talked about previously, we are trying to create a service that is very much welcoming, exceeding the expectation of the customer, making sure that when you leave our train, you will have a positive feeling. We work very intensely with recruitment of people. We are very thorough in our recruitment process. We work a lot with education, follow-up of all employees, but we also give a large mandate to the people working on the trains. Because of course we can set up routines, processes, making sure to work in this and this and this way, but things happen, and it's when things happen that doesn't go according to plan that the customer actually sees, is this a company that cares about me as a customer, or is it just a process industry? So we have a lot of mandate for the people on board and a lot of trust for their way of working and making decisions.
I don't know, you were here to hear Roger say, if you're not smiling, don't come to work.
No,
you know,
that's good.
That's tough on a Monday morning at 5 a.m.
Yeah,
anyway,
it is. I mean, it's okay to come to work without smiling, but you better make sure that the customer is smiling when he or she leaves the train.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So punctuality is obviously important to you and everything else, but you're still constrained. You're still operating within a system that is much to the benefit of the state and not to you. So there's a lot of things to do, a lot of ways to push for the future.
Yeah, yes, it is. And I mean, for our punctuality, as is for SJs, it is infrastructural issues that is the main driver for problems. But I mean, I think it's some sort of culture, mindset things that need to develop within the Transport Authority, where you see yourselves not only as someone who are to develop the railway system for 10, 20, 30 years ahead from now, but also being a daily operational business, affecting people's travel here and now. So, I mean, we are trying to push that as much as we can, making sure that they are aware that they are affecting people's lives on a daily basis.
Indeed. We heard about crossing Germany for €10. I don't know what time of day that is, but I mean, that's an astonishingly low fare. Is that the sort of pitch that you are trying for? Lower fares or?
Yeah, we're taking down fares. Actually, a study that was made by the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm looked at the pricing in 2014 before our entrance, and then a year after we entered. What they could see, and of course we have a dynamic pricing, so you need to make that with an index, but they could see that SJ pricing has gone down with 12%, but they could also see that our prices was another 25% lower than the previous SJ pricing. So we are taking down prices. We are not looking to be a low price operator. We want to be a high quality operator, but we also see that with lower cost, we could also offer lower prices.
Indeed. Okay. So what sort of service do you offer on the trains themselves? I mean, is there something that distinguishes you from the others?
Now, basically, we have three ticket classes. We have the fixed ticket, which is basically a seat. We have the flex ticket, where you can rebook your ticket on a daily basis, and then we have the plus. And in the plus, we always have a first class plus. We always have a meal. But something we also introduced in February this year was actually a next seat free. A number of the airlines do it. So because we could see that that was a downside for us compared to the incumbent, who has, in their first class, they have a 2+1 seating. We have a 2+2 throughout the train for flexibility. But we could see that, I mean, the 2+1 was seen as a benefit. So what we did, and what we made some customer service on, was to see what is the value of getting the next seat free, which was extremely high. So right now, if you buy a first-class ticket, you know that you will always have the seat next to you empty.
Is that right? Yeah. That sounds terrific. And can I ask a very basic question? Because, as I say, I'm here on behalf of the passenger rather than any operators and the technologies and so on. We've introduced new trains in the UK recently, built by Siemens, fantastic. The technology is amazing. They're also uncomfortable, frankly. That's the only way to put it. If anybody wants to come and argue with me from Siemens, I'll be delighted to have the argument. Is passenger comfort important to you? Just basic passenger comfort?
Yes, extremely important. I mean, and I would say it's two major, or maybe three major things that we can look at. The first one is that our trains is going slightly slower than the SJ trains because they're not tilting in the curves, so they have a more robust.
So you're operating on a high-speed line, but not with high-speed trains?
Yeah, high-speed trains. They are 200 kilometers per hour.
Right.
But it's just that you're not allowed to have the same overspeed in some parts on the track. No.
Yeah.
So and that is actually a benefit because it creates less seasickness or motion sickness. Then you can also always look at the seatings, and I mean that is. It is an important question, but it's also extremely difficult to have a one size fits all kind of seating. So we get a lot of positive feedback, but you can also look at some people that would like the seating to be differently. But we definitely do look at it.
Right. Okay. Now, what about the future? What do you plan? What are your plans? What would you like to do? What do you think you can do?
I mean, we would like to start operating on a number of additional routes. I mean, I would say that there might be a handful in Sweden or Scandinavia that could be of interest. What we are working hard on right now is moving into the business segment more strongly, or business passenger segment, moving towards positive cash flow. And when we're there, we will definitely start making more serious attempts on increasing operation.
So what you're saying is you're carrying losses for the moment?
Yes, we are. As I will say that all airlines and railway companies that have started off on an open access network has done the first years.
But the people in Hong Kong are willing to run along with this for a while?
I mean, they're very enthusiastic about what we're doing. We're unique within the MTR family to the extent that we actually run on an open access network. So they're also looking at us to learn for expanding businesses elsewhere.
Indeed. Okay. Yeah. And just to come at this business about which we started really with, connecting everything together. I mean, you're talking strictly about trains now, but do you have ambitions, or are you able to think about, from the front door, what do they call the end-to-end business? What are your views on that? How does that apply to what you're doing?
I think there's, and we talked about that also, but I think there's two major challenges that the railway can be part of the solution. It's the climate change, which we need to do something about, where we need to get people down from air down to railway. But it's also about congestion and capacity bottlenecks, and where we need to see more mobility as a service, and where we can definitely be a part. What my view on it is that we should be also look at us as a part of that system, but it might not be us that is actually setting up the platform for creating the customer value. I mean, looking at other businesses, take Spotify, it wasn't one of the existing record labels that started that business. I mean, looking at the platforms, I think it's important for us to run a very good service, but also providing a lot of data and information to make sure and enable for other people to develop services on top of that. I don't think that will be us. I don't think that will be STA either. I think there will be someone else coming in and actually creating that value for us.
So are you talking about partners or people above the whole thing?
Yeah, no. I mean, platforms above the whole thing. Just take an example. Let's say that I'm on Fridays, I take my son to soccer, and then I leave work a bit earlier, about 4, to be on time. Right now, I mean, I do all the thinking. I mean, I know that I need to leave work at 4, and then I go to the metro, and the metro might be late, and then I will have my son late for soccer. What I would like to have on top of that is someone seeing both my calendar as well as the transportation system, making sure that, okay, my calendar tells the platform that, okay, I should go with my son to soccer, and I need to leave at 4. But they also have the information about the transportation system, making sure that, okay, now we can see that the metro you usually take is 5 or 10 minutes late. So push notice to my phone, you either leave 10 minutes earlier, or you take a different route to soccer practice because we will be late elsewhere. And that kind of development, I don't see that it's us as MTR who does that. We want to provide a strong service, we want to provide a lot of data and information, but it might be someone else actually delivering the service on top.
That's very fascinating, I must say. If MTR is running late, that's that metro, that's you again. I mean,
No.
you will be on the phone shouting at someone. Yeah, quite right.
I will call my colleague, but they are a very punctual service, so I'm usually fine.
Thank you. Well done, Mats. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, what we want to do now is have a bit of a discussion between us because, you know, I can feel particularly on my right here, things to come in. Anybody else got a question quickly that they want to bounce? Well, I think we've got a microphone or two. Anyone in the room? Put your hand up straight away. I think we've all so many interesting things. Where we say, yes, okay, it's a gentleman there. There is a microphone coming round, which is good. If you could identify yourself, please, and where you're from, the business you're in, that would be useful as well. And if it's a particular person you want to ask a question to, please say which it is.
I would. My name is Jaap Bierman. I'm heading up the Dutch public transportation company in The Hague, an area. So local tramway and bus company. I have a question to either the MTR gentleman, Mats, or FlixBus, Matthias. I have a lot of admiration for your courage of being the runner-up and entrepreneurship that you display. One of my challenges, combining also your question at the start that you raised before introducing the panel, is how can you make ticketing and customer experience simple when all what we are doing now is increasing the fragmentation. So I understand the benefits of competition in general, but my struggle is that when you have one customer making one journey from a door to a door, having X amount of different tickets, different sites, different time schedules, different operators, different responsible persons to execute this smooth journey, because it is fragmented, how would you recommend from a policy point of view that you reconcile that and have a coordinated body, either coordinated app, coordinated websites, coordinated customer interface, so that customers, including customers that don't like Twitter or don't have all the modern phone equipment, as we heard this morning, have a seamless and simple journey? Used to be executed by the one monopolistic state-owned enterprise. You're knocking at the door. How do you see, from a policy point of view, Europe should go ahead to ensure seamless, integrated travel experience, knowing that the operator and the ticketing and all that is so much fragmented, and you're advocating even more fragmentation, as I see it.
Thank you very much for your question. Who wants to pick it up quickly? We don't have a lot of time for this, but if you can...
I can start off. I mean, you addressed something really interesting and something important. If we want to benefit from competition, those are two things that we need to resolve. I see that we need to get to the point where we actually have the platform showing all options of travel. A lot of websites already accessible on the airline industry, but that should also be applied for rail. Maybe through legislation, I don't know. Regarding your second point, I think through tickets is important, making sure that if you as a customer book a trip from A to B using a lot of different means of transportation, you need to feel comfortable that you will get to the target or your destination without additional costs on the way.
And I think just to add there, what you said about like how the current railway operators try to not getting us, I now have to say, because I think it's in every country almost the same, on their platform, but it's like the only point where you actually as a customer look for railway trips. I think there it comes again like that we look too much as competitors to each other, and we lose, we don't consider that we actually have altogether the same target, that we want to increase the public transportation. And I think as soon as we change this mindset, will then be also quite much easier to really set up same standards so that you can use interfaces between the different platforms to actually give the customer a more smooth experience, even though he uses different operators.
Okay, fine, thank you. Any thoughts, gentlemen? Any additional to that?
Well, I have a big struggle on this issue because at one hand I have great admiration of the newcomers, and especially FlixBus is really rocking the European market. But at the same time, you know, everybody's talking about disruption and break down the barriers of the old monopolistic companies. At the same time, we have a lot of data. We have a great way of traveling in the Netherlands. Our NS app is really tremendous and is open for other things like the bike and even other companies. But then you need to have a policy of also buy-in. At the same time, I have this idea that in the Netherlands and maybe elsewhere, first everybody wants to break down everything, also the things that are already good. And that is really, I think, a difficult fight. I'm much more ahead of creating mobility as a service, as a platform unto a certain level, and at the same time also appreciate what is already good and don't break down everything. That's the tension.
Just a short comment, because I think you have a point. I mean, looking at what's happened in Sweden between Stockholm and Gothenburg, where we now compete with SJ, I mean, service has gone up, prices has gone down, punctuality has gone up, and that accounts both for us and for SJ. And if SJ would sit here beside me, I think they would also talk well about competition, saying that that has developed what we already had. So it's not about breaking down, it's just about making sure that we, competition brings development. Yeah.
It's a fascinating, it is a wonderfully tricky area, I agree. We don't have a lot of time, and we have to press on. We've got all sorts of things happening this morning. I just want to ask one very quick question, just flip round the room. You've all said, oh, well, you know, young people are not going to use cars, and, you know, everybody wants to sort of have integrated transport and all sorts of ideas. So we're all, what about autonomous motor cars, though? It's one thing that none of you have actually mentioned, and I know there are setbacks. There's been another accident in America and all that sort of thing. But, you know, this is something you might have to face, which might completely disrupt, to use that word, your market. What do you think? Do you think it's a runner or not, and in what sort of time scale?
No, definitely we will get them. A lot of tests is doing right now, but it would still not resolve the whole congestion issue within the bigger cities. So, I mean, public transportation will be important even if we enter that stage.
Yes, indeed.
What's the use of 900 autonomous cars behind each other on a highway? It's the same as one train. So this whole expectation, of course it will come, but we also have the spatial area, we have the environmental issues, and we have to take all this in account. And I see in the big metropolitan regions in the world that everything is changing into a form of public transport, and the freedom to go out in your own car in the weekend or in the peripheric areas where cars are really necessary. I'm not against cars, but the answer for the future is public transport.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Eve, do you think
in the cities?
Well, I think there are two things that we can't change. One is demographic growth in urban centers through, birth and immigration, and roadway congestion. That's not going to change. And most reports on automated vehicles, even electrical automated vehicles, is that they will bring somewhere between 25 to 35% growth in traffic, because essentially they bring into the car people who today can't drive, children and elder people. So the capacity you gain by having automation, you lose because you're bringing onto the car people who today do not drive. So it's a net zero benefit from a point of view. And as I said, demographics alone will eliminate any opportunity we have to create capacity on the roadways. So to me, it's really not a threat at all.
Tas, what do you think? Do you have a car, Matar? Do you have a car?
I don't have a car.
I suspected you
But
didn't.
I have a bike.
Yeah, of course.
I'm looking more forward towards autonomous buses and trains, actually. And I think at the end, I know I'm coming back to my statement, but I think if we do our job good and if we put the customer in the middle and offer a good service and make the customer aware that he can use his travel time much better and much easier if he has kids or if she has kids and so on, then we don't have to be afraid about autonomous cars at all.
Okay, lovely. Well, we do have to stop, unfortunately. Thank you very much. Will you give another round of applause, please, to our fantastic, first class. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.